Can you explain to the jury what this cause of death means and why you agree with it?
So this is not a sudden cardiac death, a sudden cardiac arrhythmia. This is a death where both the heart and lungs stop working. And the point is that it's due to law enforcement subdual, restraint, and compression.
Do you have an opinion to a reasonable degree of medical certainty if Mr. Floyd would have died that night had he not been subject to the subdual and restraint of the police?
There's no evidence to suggest he would have died that night, except for the interactions with law enforcement.
Let's take the police out of this, and I'm going to ask you a hypothetical. Let's assume you found Mr. Floyd dead in his residence. No police involvement, no drugs, right? The only thing you found would be these facts about his heart. What would you conclude to be the cause of death?
In that very narrow set of circumstances, I would probably conclude that the cause of death was his heart disease.
So again, just kind of taking into consideration, removing certain variables, right? You find a person at home, no struggle with the police, right? And the person doesn't have a heart problem, but you find fentanyl and methamphetamine in this person's system at the levels that they are at. Would you certify this as an overdose?
Again, in the absence of any of these other realities, yes, I could consider that to be an overdose.
Now, in Mr. Floyd's case, you listed the immediate cause of death as cardiopulmonary arrest, complicating law enforcement, subdual, restraint, and neck compression.
Correct.
What does cardiopulmonary arrest mean?
That's really just fancy medical lingo for the heart and the lungs stopped. The heart, no pulse, no breathing.
Did you examine the contents of Mr. Floyd's stomach as part of your autopsy?
I did.
What did you note regarding the contents?
The stomach contains approximately 450 milliliters of dark brown fluid with innumerable soft fragments of gray-white food particulate matter resembling bread.
Did you note anything resembling either a pill or pill fragments in the stomach contents?
I did not.
Do you recall describing the level of fentanyl as a fatal level of fentanyl?
I recall describing it in other circumstances. It would be a fatal level, yes, in other circumstances.
Do you recall telling the county attorney's office that had you found Mr. Floyd under different circumstances, you would have determined this to be a fentanyl overdose?
So I don't recall specifically what I told the county attorney, but it almost certainly went something like this. Had Mr. Floyd been home alone in his locked residence with no evidence of trauma, and the only autopsy finding was that fentanyl level, then yes, I would certify his death as due to fentanyl toxicity. Again, interpretation of drug concentrations is very context dependent.
In terms of the placement of Mr. Chauvin's knee, would that explain anatomically why Mr. Floyd, would that anatomically cut off Mr. Floyd's airway?
In my opinion, it would not.
All right, a pair of pathologists on the stand today, but who had a better day? Was it the prosecution or defense? Let's bring back in our think tank. Imran Ansari, we'll start with you. Who do you think had a better day and why?
Vinny, I'm going to still go with the prosecution because the narrative in terms of the cause of death continues. They've been putting on the experts, the medical experts, one by one, following the fact and witness experts that started off this case, and the narrative still remains the same. Did Eric Nelson score some points? Yes. Did he get that concession out regarding the placement of the knee to the neck? Yes. But I think in the totality of the evidence and everything else that the prosecution has piled on in this case and will continue to do so, that may be mine.
All right, Michelle Simpson, Adigo, who had a better day, prosecution or defense?
Not to go with the tide, but I really think that it was the state by just a little bit. You know, I really didn't like that hypo by Eric Nelson. I think he's getting a little cute there, and I don't really think that's what jurors respond to. argue. It wasn't common sense. You know, a lot of times I argued when I was on the defense side too that the truth and the facts are often simple. And that is really what the prosecution has been sticking with to many degrees in different forms. I think Dr. Thomas laid that out, and she is the expert who, at least in part, trained Dr. Baker.
All right, Brian Watkins, prosecution or defense today?
You know, I don't want to make this a win for the prosecution, but I got to go with them also. The defense's hypothetical misses the point. He would not have been found dead in his house without any contact with Derek Chauvin. He knows how to do his drugs. He can handle his drugs. He's been doing his drugs for a long time with that bad heart. And so that connection there to say it would have been an overdose, but for, you know, if he had no police contact is kind of silly because he didn't overdose, you know, and that's the point. He can handle his drugs. So clearly there had to be something in addition. And like I said, you're not going to find one cause here. It's going to be a combination of
You
causes.
can't handle your
And it
drugs, you
all
don't know
starts
when you
with
can handle your
knee on the neck.
Yeah, I think prosecutors had a better day too. And
There's a point
I
that
thought, you know, I
you get
pointed out
Prince.
that the medical examiner was on and off quickly.
Yes, but Prince did a ton at once though. The guy's been doing drugs though for a while.
This guy took 2 pills, he had 2 more pills on his, that he put in his mouth when the cops arrested him.
Yeah,
He
so
wouldn't swallow, and they found one in the cop car.
yeah, so if they wouldn't
It
have,
was overdose.
yeah, but
Overdose. Accidentally overdosed, because he didn't want to get busted.
yeah, if he didn't, yeah, otherwise he wouldn't have put those 2 pills in his mouth and he wouldn't have overdosed.
Right.
Yeah, so there you go, right there.
So it wasn't
So
the cop's fault.
yeah, but the guy knew what to do though too. So he's right though. The guy, if the cop wouldn't have shown him up, he wouldn't have overdosed. If the
Right,
cop,
but it's not the cop's fault he died.
Prosecutors should try to finish this thing up, Michelle.
He fucking overdosed.
I would try to finish it up the way that they started it, with some of the
Cop
emotionally
didn't put,
compelling
you couldn't had the
testimony
pills there, you
of
would've got
some of the
arrested
people who
for
were
having
there, who
pills.
witnessed what was happening that day, who saw the 9.5 minutes of Chauvin's knee on George Floyd's